Query and Company is the name of this program, and it typically and more often than not, I guess that would mean typically, but by design, it is a local sports talk radio show. And yes, of course, we get into things like the World Series or the Super Bowl and whatever else. But for the most part, we stay, not because we have anything against it, but other franchises, other teams, big games, etc., take a backseat to the local teams, the stories that are taking place here in Indianapolis. Sauce Gardner practicing with the Colts and trying to monitor whether or not he is going to be a go for when they're in Germany because he's coming off concussion protocol. The Pacers struggling last night. Jay Huff finally getting active a little bit, but the Pacers losing a game that seemingly was not going to be a possibility. Indiana in action in the Darren DeVries era getting underway for IU basketball. Indiana football obviously getting set to go to Penn State as the number 2 seed in the college football, all of those things. And that will be the priority of conversation today, those topics. As a matter of fact, we have guests on to talk about all of them, and then Eddie and I will get into also our raging debate over who is the biggest band from yesterday. But I want to begin with only because new information has come out in the relative immediacy between when you first probably heard of this story and then the right now, the present. And I'm talking about the fact that in the National Football League, which is obviously the primary sports league in this country, when you have a young person passing away at the age of 24 that is coming off of kind of a breakthrough game and scoring a touchdown for the marquee franchise in the Dallas Cowboys, nationally speaking, and you hear the headline this morning when you got up or when you're on your way to work or whatever it may be, that a 24-year-old Dallas Cowboy player in his second year in the National Football League has passed away, that in itself, a 24-year-old, the tragedy of that age, it goes without saying. And then you compound that with the fact that a 24-year-old, when you know that they are a professional athlete and you're like, okay, they're in the prime physical shape of their life, and you begin then wondering or questioning what could happen in any number of varieties of ways. And there is certainly I guess a morbid curiosity of those things, but also just a natural, was this something from a health standpoint or, a workout standpoint, whatever else that we can learn from. The reason I mention all of this is because it's only been in the last 15 or 20 minutes, and I would assume that a vast majority of you may not have heard, and you may be wondering, this statement from, and again, if you are new to this, Marshawn Kneeland is the defensive player, 24-year-old for the Dallas Cowboys, who the word came out this morning had passed away. This in the last 20 minutes or so from the Frisco, Texas Police Department. And I'm going to read it directly. On November 5th, 2025, at 10:33 p.m., Texas Department of Public Safety troopers attempted to stop a vehicle for a traffic violation on the northbound lanes of the Dallas North Tollway near Keller Springs Boulevard. The driver refused to stop, resulting in a pursuit with DPS troopers. However, DPS troopers lost sight of the vehicle, and the pursuit was terminated. The vehicle was later located abandoned and had been involved in a crash on the southbound lanes of Dallas Parkway near Warren Parkway. DPS aircraft and troopers, along with the Frisco Police Department, searched the immediate area and found the driver, 24 years of age, Marshawn Kneeland of Plano, deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. For inquiries regarding the death investigation, please contact the Frisco Police Department. The investigation is ongoing. No information additionally is available. The only reason I mention that is because it is a tragic situation. It is a disturbing, it goes without saying, storyline. And you do then wonder, moving forward as we continue with the National Football League and head trauma and injuries, what things may go into the circumstance that would cause a 24-year-old to end their own life. Maybe it was just simply the trauma of the situation. Maybe it was something from a head trauma. Who knows? And we may never know. Simply to say the two following things. The first being, I just thought I would share that information because it is new enough that I'm assuming a lot of you listening may have had that curiosity or question and did not know that answer. And number two, I think it goes without saying as well, and is a reminder, not knowing the circumstances that would lead someone to that level of desperation, except for to say that it is a reminder that we as human beings never know in totality what, and I'm not speaking specifically to this situation, but in general speaking, it is a reminder that you just don't know what people are going through, and that there is always an avenue. If you are someone who is struggling, if you are someone who has had depression, if you are someone who feels like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, there are always friends, associates, outlets, organizations to help along. And as we have learned from the NFL franchise here in town, and I give a ton of credit to the Indianapolis Colts and a thank you to them for the Kicking the Stigma Foundation in the fact that it is a reminder that the human brain and emotion thereof is kind of the last frontier that we truly know everything about, medically speaking. And if you are someone who is struggling or knows someone who is, you are not alone in that journey, in that question, and in that struggle, and there is no shame in it. There is no shame in it. And certainly there is no shame in reaching out to someone who might be able to help you out with that. And if you're going through that, certainly hope the best for that journey for you. And at the very least, most people have my cell phone number, and I've had people before on occasion that have reached out to say, hey, what's the name of the organization you mentioned before, or a place or an outlet that you can go? I would be happy to help facilitate in getting you that information in any hour of the day, so long as I'm awake, and being able to help out with that. So wanted to start the show simply with that news and information. But having said all of that, good afternoon to you. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program. It is Query & Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We will get into the Pacers conversation in just a minute, but let's begin with this, Eddie, and that is, I guess, the good news from a football standpoint here on in between the lines level standpoint. We've talked so much about Sauce Gardner and this trade that took place, and we can debate till the cows come home on, when exactly we'll be able to definitively say how good a trade it was. Did they give up too much for him? I don't think so, because of where I think those draft picks are going to be. But they now have a guy that I think they hope continues to be a lockdown type corner. He does come to Indianapolis in the concussion protocol, but Eddie, all signs yesterday, now that we can take a look back on it, appear as though, in fact, he is going to play against Atlanta.
Can confirm, Jake. He cleared concussion protocol about an hour ago. He met with the media about a half hour ago, working on trying to get the audio of that and cut it up and get to you what Sauce Gardner had to say with the media in his first appearance as an Indianapolis Colt.
The game itself, it does feel to me, and maybe I'm the anomaly here, maybe I'm the outlier, but it feels to me like every game in the NFL is significant. Every game in the NFL is important. We know all of that. But the impact of this game, because of the trade, because of the message that is sent, the Colts going into Pittsburgh and laying an egg, and they laid an egg. They did. And we will see here forward whether or not that's the real Colts or whether or not that was simply they had a bad day. And I think it's the latter. I do. Pittsburgh has defensive players on their front line that so far they have not been, their defense has been as porous as can be. But they have talent on that defensive front line, obviously, and they woke up and they found the fountain of youth or whatever you want to call it, and boom. And TJ Watt's an elite level player, and they were able to make plays, and it just kept the Colts guessing the entire day. And the turnovers 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 and the turnovers. If it feels like I said that a lot, I just said that word as many times as they did exactly that. It was an ugly performance on Sunday. But if you are an upper level, dare I say it, in the upper quartile of the upper quartile, which is in fact rare air, if that is the team that you are, then part of what makes a great team is the ability to be that goldfish. Learn from it, see the video, know your areas of mistake, and move on. Bad teams allow that to derail you. Bad teams go through a game like that, get thrown off of what it is that they want to do, and that becomes the trend, and they're never able to get back onto the straight and narrow that they had before they had their hiccup. I do not think, I'm 99.9% certain and sure that this particular version of the Indianapolis Colts is not that kind of a bad team that is thrown off kilter like that. I think they're fine. I think they'll be fine. But this game with Atlanta now becomes a little bit, dare I say it, has a little more of a hot sauce to it. And I don't mean Sauce Gardner. It was a game that if they would have gone into Pittsburgh, and if they would have gone into Pittsburgh and won 24-10 and looked like the Colts that we've seen all year long, control the ball on offense, milk a lot of clock, make some plays on defense, win, move on. If they'd done that, then we would have said, the Atlanta game, you really want to get that because Kansas City's next on the schedule. But if they slip up, not a huge deal because they've got the bye, they can get healthy, they can regroup, and then you go into Kansas City, the place that they are the only franchise in the regular season Patrick Mahomes has never beaten, and that'll be fun, and Arrowhead will be cool, and it'll be a great place to go and watch a game and whatever else. But it has a little bit of to me, every game is big, but it has a little more emphasis than I think it would have before. There's an element of the fun to it, right? Oh, it's kind of fun. You're going to Germany, and there's going to be, Colts fan zone in the middle of Berlin, and how fun is it that, we get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it'll be the first game, and, it almost feels like an exhibition game. I know it's not. But it has just a little bit more meaning now because you don't want to go into the bye having lost 2 straight, and then all of a sudden you're backpedaling a little bit. And people are starting to question whether or not you're the real deal. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that, and I'm very curious, Eddie, to see, Sauce Gardner and plugging him in, and I think it's safe to say, he is going to be plugged in and let's go right away.
Yep.
And is that the one position in the National Football League that you can kind of be airdropped in, and it's not like you got to know cadences and defensive calls and everything else. You line up across the guy that you're lined up across, and it's more about you versus him versus you with everyone else. Does that make sense?
I'm sure yes, and then there's also the aspect of just communicating with the safeties and knowing the coverage and what you need to do on specific coverage schemes. So I would probably say, cornerback's probably the easiest position outside of, kicker, long snapper, punter, those positions on special teams, your specialists that are the easiest to, as you like to say, airdrop in and start right away.
I just, I'm very curious by it because, and I know he's a great player, and I know that I'm naturally a cynic. The difference with this and others, there have been other players that when the Colts acquired them, it felt like, holy cow, this is big. And I think you have to go back and look and be honest with yourself about the in-the-moment enthusiasm that was there with the acquisition of certain players. And the one that I go back to, and before people condemn me here for what I'm saying, this is different. I get it, and I'll tell you why that's the case. But there have been trades that have been made that the Colts get a player, and it's like, oh, my gosh, this is big. Trent Richardson comes to mind, okay? When when the Colts got Trent Richardson, I mean, I remember I was on the air doing a show, and all of us, and Jim Irsay is sending out tweets saying shock and awe, and this is just how massive this is going to be. And then it comes out that they traded for Trent Richardson, and Trent Richardson, wow, and I remember at the time, yes, he was under 1,000 yards in Cleveland, but you got to look at, like, on the left side of the line, if he ran to the left, he averaged 2.5 more yards per carry than on the right, and the Colts' strength is on the left side, and and they've got Andrew Luck, and now you got 2 of the top 3 picks in the draft, or top 5, or whatever it was. And yeah, it was a disaster from the get-go. It just was. And running back's a little bit different position, but there was no indication really to know that was going to be a disaster. And even from the Cleveland standpoint, I don't think a lot of people would have told you. I think Trent Richardson, when he was a Brown, it wasn't like in the moment it was like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason they're getting rid of him. He had all kinds of red flags about him or whatever else. I think it was that in hindsight, you can maybe go back and say that, but in the moment, that was not the case. Corey Simon. When the Colts got Corey Simon, it was like, this is huge, this is massive, everybody's excited. Again, different case because Corey Simon was at the end of his career. He had a mystery illness and just missed time altogether. Darius Hayward-Bay. When they got Darius Hayward-Bay, it was like, this guy, lightning fast receiver, and he might have been a free agent when I think about it. But, you never know how guys are going to work out. This does feel different, Eddie, because he's 25 years old, he's in prime, and I don't think that this is a situation where the Jets were quietly and privately the ones that were shopping him around. I think it was that the Colts just said, you know what, we're going to test it to the wind here and see what's out there. And when you offer 2 number ones and a receiver and they don't have a secondary receiver out there, then yeah, I think it was more that the Jets were like, well, this is an offer we can't refuse, even though it is a part. Do not read into the fact that we're parting ways with him. And I think he's going to be a very, very good player for them. I'm simply saying there also is just this weird precedent league-wide where you kind of never know how guys can acclimate from one spot to the next.
I also don't think that this was a guy that the Jets were, actively trading.
That's what I mean.
Like, it was like, hey, in fantasy football, Jake, if I came, like, you have Justin Jefferson in the league. Like, nobody would expect you to trade Justin Jefferson in the Query & Company Fantasy Football League, but, I'll come your way, text you, like, hey, what do you think of this? And next thing you know, a deal is done. The league's like, wait, what? I didn't know Justin Jefferson would have been available.
Jefferson sucks this year. You know that, right?
Yeah, but, yeah,
would you like
the
him?
Point.
Would you like Justin Jefferson? I'll give him to you for very cheap.
There we go.
I have a fire sale going on. I didn't do my due diligence in looking at the fact that he was going to have Carson Wentz trying to throw him the football for the better part of the year. You know what I mean?
You should have had your due diligence done to know that it was going to be at least J.J. McCarthy.
I did know that. But, again, it's Justin Jefferson, right? I mean, I put my eggs in the basket of the wrong JJ. Let's put it that way. Hey, Jake, when the Colts got Trent Richardson, my dad and I both got jerseys. Now we wear it, ironically, like the paper bag over the head for the Browns. Yeah, I mean, that was – don't forget the trade, Jake, for Fred Young, disaster. Yeah, I think that one, though, Freddie Young was one that when that happened, and I'm old enough to remember when it happened. And it was like, oh, my gosh, Pro Bowler, defensive player. And what nobody knew is that I think it was his shoulder that was just completely gone. And he got here, and I'm surprised he even passed the physical. Either way, we'll talk about it over the course of today. Zach Kiefer going to join the program, as a matter of fact, coming up in 1 o'clock hours. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts, coming up 2 o'clock. Pacers last night. Eddie, I didn't think they were going to lose to the Brooklyn Nets. I thought for sure, look, this team is so depleted. We can't even get mad about it, right? You can't. I mean, I'm not trying to be some homer and carry their water. And that seems pretty egregious, losing a home game to the Nets and giving them their first win of the year, and both teams now with just a single win. But they are so ravaged by injury. Now, they still have Nesmith and Siakam. My concern is this. My concern for the Pacers, I have to be realistic in thinking about, okay, no Nembhard. no McConnell, no Matherin, no Toppin, no Furphy, no Jackson now, no Halliburton, obviously. You can go on and on. And, I mean, even their emergency replacements are in need of an emergency replacement. I get it. And so, therefore, you cannot allow yourself to look at it and say this is total doomsday, because then you start to get encouraged by the minutes being logged by players that may need it. And also, and it's early to go here with this, but if you end up in the lottery and then it's like free money, oh my gosh, now they've got a young lottery type player that we know eventually. I do believe that the Miles Turner replacement for when Halliburton comes back and their full push, their re-push back to try to get to the finals that takes place. Isaiah Jackson, we will continue to analyze whether or not he can be that guy. But now, all of a sudden, do you get yourself in position where you're looking at it and you're saying, wow, that player might actually be attainable for them, you know, via the draft or in the lottery or whatever it may be. The point being, there are positives that can come from the floor completely falling out from underneath you for this year because of two things. The floor's not falling out from underneath you because you're playing poorly and you have guys that have just, you know, that are going in different directions or anything else. It's because of attrition, obviously. But the one thing that gives me pause and concern is when the Pacers were, and I'm not saying it was ever even in discussion or debate, but I remember on this show having the discussion and debate, and I was on the wrong side of it. I was wrong in determining whether or not you give and push all in on Pascal Siakam. And at that time, I was saying, I don't know that you do, because the timelines don't add up, because he is an older player than the rest of your core. All those other guys I mentioned, Halliburton and Nembhard and Nesmith and Toppin, different age range. And you are going to end up overpaying for a player that you're going to be wishing you can get out of the contract for. This is what I was saying before it all came together. And credit to those whose job it is to make that determination, because they made the right one in giving Siakam that contract, and what a huge part, obviously, of what they're doing that he is. Guilty as charged on my behalf of being wrong and reassessing that, or wrongly assessing that. And one of the things that was the counter to my concern of the age difference and the timeline thereof was, yes, but Jake Siakam is a young over 30, because he has not logged the minutes and the games on that body that a lot of players at that age have. If you look at his minutes played in Toronto, if you look at his journey through college, etc., he does not have the wear and tear. It is true, he might be a 7-year-old Lexus, but he's a 7-year-old Lexus with 45,000 miles as opposed to 145,000 miles. That was the selling point, and that clearly was correct. And the guy is an elite level, back to the basket, create his own basket, all areas, everything that you want. Pascal Siakam has been that. My one concern, and it's a nitpick concern, but my one concern about him, and there's only one. I mean, now we've had more than enough time to assess him. We've had more than enough time to figure it out, and everything is aligning for if you can be patient, for this year to be able to pay itself dividends if it continues this way. But there is one concern about Pascal Siakam. And I'll tell you about it, and we'll discuss it with Tony East on the other side on this Thursday edition, Query & Company on the Fan.
let's say 2005 NBA history is not a layup for me, even if
I
it's
get
like
it.
very famous and obvious players.
Yeah, I get it. Now, Chris Mullin, by the way, his nickname amongst his peers, Shooting God, G-O-D, not because he was a god shooting the basketball, which he was, but because he also was from New York, and that's the way that he would tell people that he was a shooting god. There you go. There's your Chris Mullin trivia. All right, Tony, appreciate the time as always, man.
Yes. Enjoy Sauce Gardner, everybody.
That's right. Sauce Gardner, we will hear from him. Zach Kiefer in 15, Sauce Gardner and what he had to say in Indianapolis next. That's a false start offense. Maybe I was on a false start there because I looked across the line and saw Sauce Gardner guarding me, and so I had to get an early jump on it. Sauce Gardner is now a Colt, 25 years old. You know the story. You know the news of the trade coming from the New York Jets. Question is, has Sauce Gardner today met with the Indianapolis media for the first time? Let's find out from him. Sauce, exactly how and when did you find out that no longer were you a New York Jet or a Colt? Were you looking for a trade? Take us through how it all went down.
I actually was laying in the bed with my girl, and I was just chilling. I just got a call from Muji, the GM for the Jets, and, obviously the trade deadline was coming up, so I was just like, please let it be, like, my ideal situation. Like, I don't want to go to a losing team. I don't want to go to a team that's, like, on the other side of the world. I was able to come, when he told me the Colts, like, obviously I got drafted there and everything like that, but I want to win and things like that. So it was like this was a great situation. Obviously knowing a few guys on the team already, being closer to home, being closer to where I went to college, like, God just keep blessing me in many ways. So, it's truly a blessing to be here. And my favorite color, blue, so, it just worked out perfectly.
Now, keep in mind that when he talked about knowing guys with the Colts and playing collegiately, played at Cincinnati with Alec Pierce, saw him often in practice, a native of the state of Michigan. So in that regard, for Sauce Gardner, in fact, closer to home. But the Jets did not think that they would be obviously getting ready 5 days ago, Sauce Gardner, that he would be heading to to Germany to take on Atlanta. So how do you prepare when you go from thinking that you're with one team that is just simply trying to find footing to now another team that's trying to make a push? Sauce Gardner, the difference, I guess, in preparation now with a new team, new week, and new franchise.
To go out there and ball, go out there and just be vocal, make it like I've been here already, like I've been here. So, that's the main thing for me, not being somebody where it's like, you got to over-communicate to me because you might think that I don't know what we plan and stuff like that. It's my job to get everything and understand everything that we're about to play on Sunday in the short stint of time that I have.
25-year-old Sauce Gardner, now a member of the Indianapolis Colts, will wear jersey number 1 after his time with the New York Jets and the University of Cincinnati. One thing about anybody that plays at that corner position, but certainly one that can cover the way Gardner does, he is flat out athletic. And speaking of athletic, that is the place of employment now of our next guest, Zach Keefer, who is their national writer for the NFL, and he joins us next. Poll is still up. I don't even know how it came to be that we were doing it. But who is the bigger band? And I don't really have – I mean, I'm fine either way with which – sometimes with these I get like – I'm like, no, I'm telling you.
We were discussing yesterday. I played Bon Jovi coming back from a break, and he was like, is that the biggest, artist or band that I haven't seen that you, as in Jake, have not seen in person? And you mentioned AC/DC and you mentioned Metallica. That led to that debate.
So that became the question of which is the bigger band, the more iconic band, the more legendary band, the bigger act, the bigger artist, AC/DC or Metallica. And we've got that up right now on the X-Post Twitter. An hour and 42 minutes left to vote. And right now, starting to pull, one of the two is starting to pull away. We'll ask Zach Kiefer from The Athletic. He joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Your thoughts, Zach, bigger band, AC/DC, Metallica?
Metallica.
Yeah.
Jake, for any of your listeners out there that went to my alma mater, Hamilton Southeastern, it was only Metallica in the athletic weight room for all 4 years, every day. And so it just kind of it was embedded in my head that's what you lift weights to is Metallica.
Now,
so I'm going with that.
Zach, I don't mean this as any sort of a knock, but by looking at you, I'm curious. My first question would be, how do you know what music they were playing in the weight room?
Yeah, Jake, you're cutting deep there.
No.
Hey, the all-state cross-country team, we had to lift weights too. Now,
I was just going to say, they had treadmills in there, and that's how you're able to run the drumstick dash in 4.5 minutes, right?
I'm hopping on the radio, and I'm just getting killed right away.
No, I'm telling you. You win. Are you doing the drumstick dash this year, by the way?
I am, yeah. You want
it.
me to show you the trophy after I win?
Yeah. Are you kidding? The problem is you got to wait 35 minutes for me to get there, but then, yes, that'd be fine, right?
I will. I'll make sure to do that.
Hey, Zach, let's begin with this. The easy question here would be, hey, Sauce Gardner, what does this mean for the Colts defensively? I'm going to go a little bit deeper with that because you have been around this franchise, and obviously now you cover, all of the franchises for The Athletic. But you've got a deep history in covering the Colts. And my first thought when I saw this move from Chris Ballard was I began to wonder whether or not, was this Chris Ballard pushing all in because he finally feels like his team is on the doorstep, or is this Chris Ballard pushing all in because he no longer has any sort of a pushback on moves he can make at the deadline?
Interesting thought. I want to start here because, we get all wrapped up in the players that move on the deadline. And this was a very active one for sure, right? The most active we had in maybe 20, 30 years across the league. But it's less about the players that are moving and more about the teams and what these moves say about what these teams think of themselves, right? So we've seen a very discernible shift in how Chris Ballard does business. And I want to go back to the one that got away. Now, this player wouldn't have changed the franchise, but he would have been a baller here, and his name's Danielle Hunter. And the Colts were really, really high on him. They offered him more money in free agency a couple of years ago than he eventually took with the Texans. And I think that burned at Chris Ballard. I think that burned at him that he didn't get that over the finish line. And, of course, they had a disappointing season last year. And what did they do? You've seen a very discernible shift in the way they've gone after free agents and outside help. This dude was stubborn. Chris Ballard was stubborn. He's admitted that. He thought he could draft and develop. And the only area he's really had a huge glaring hole of success in, besides quarterback, that's a different conversation, was the DB room, which is interesting because that's the position he coached when he was a coach in Texas years and years ago. But he goes out and basically buys a secondary and Ken Bynum and Mooney Ward, and now with the biggest of all in Sauce Gardner. So, this tells you that they don't trust their secondary as is, and a big part of that's injuries. But it also tells you that they've learned from coming close and missing. And if you look at all the Super Bowl champions of the last 5 or 6 years, all those teams, and I'm starting with the most recent, the Philadelphia Eagles, have been prone to risk. They have risked it. They have put their chips in. They have made big moves. And the Colts have resisted that for a long time. You're seeing a big shift. This is not Chris Ballard's personality, at least when he got here. But it's paying off right now, and I think this is a reflection of where they feel this team is at.
Do you believe, Zach Kiefer, our guest, he's on the Job House Peel and Pour guest line. He's a writer of the NFL for The Athletic. Do you believe that with Carly Ursay-Gordon, that she is an actively aggressive owner who is saying, let's go, let's push this in now? Or is she more of a hands-off owner who has said, you are the general manager, I trust that you can make the right decisions, and you do as you see fit?
I think it's the latter, Jake. I think she's been around this team for a long time to know that you don't input yourself on personnel decisions very often. Now, her dad was all over the place, right? Like, he was out there championing the trade for Trent Richardson right after that happened, saying Grigson's rolling the dice, I love it. And then he was the guy saying, Frank Reich, go home. I want to bring in Jeff Saturday because he blocked the Bears in the Super Bowl, right? So he was impetuous, he was impulsive, but he was also really patient at times. And, he really wanted to keep Chuck Pagano longer than he needed to. So, Jim Irsay was very aggressive, but he was also very standoffish and let the GM do his thing for times. I think Carly is going to stay out of that. I think she's going to support her GM. But I think it's been a nice change of pace for them. This was not, from my understanding from talking to people, this was not something that just happened Monday and Tuesday. This was something the Colts were looking at for weeks and weeks. They knew where they wanted to attack. They knew they wanted to get better in the secondary. And I think when Carly looks at her team, she likes the pieces. They like Daniel Jones, even despite the dud that was Sunday in Pittsburgh. And they feel like if you look at the NFL right now, especially the AFC, all the contenders are flawed. Like, the door is wide open.
Yeah.
And the Colts making a playoff run, as crazy as it sounds on November 5th or 6th, like, I could see it. I could see this team doing it the way the offense has played for the most part.
Well, you go back to, for example, Hunter, who is now in Houston as a defensive end. Okay, so if that's the one, and I think that Ballard, tell me if you agree with this, Zach, he still was trying to get, even though Liatu Latu is starting to show a little bit of life here, and, we know DeForest Buckner's a good player, and I think you and I would agree, Kwity Paye, he's a guy. He's okay. He's not, he's a guy, right? But I think that my assessment would be that Ballard was still trying to find that Danielle Hunter out there, or somebody he could get to make a splash online. But once he knew he couldn't, or they're just, each rock that he turned didn't have anything underneath it, then he said, you know what? I can get plays out of Liatu Latu, for example, that are coverage sacks if I can lock down the other side and just make it so that quarterbacks are statues. You agree with that thought process or the timeline of how that took place?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's probably exactly what happened. And the reality is, and every fan out there knows this, I mean, Chris Ballard lives for the defensive line like it's his family. Like, he is obsessed with the defensive line. He wants 8 or 9 really good guys. And he's invested in that position so much over the years. Now, he hits a lot of times. He's had a couple misses. But you're talking first-round picks in Latu and Kwity Paye, second-round picks in Dio, first-round picks in Buckner in the trade that they sent him, to get San Francisco's pick. So it's like he just keeps pouring into that position, waiting for the returns, right? And this is part of Ballard's DNA, right? He's going to go all in on the line because he thinks that wins in January and February and probably late December too. Now, the Colts have not done that. They've not done that since, but the first real success he had in Indy was remaking the offensive line that first year they made that divisional playoff run with Andrew Luck as a quarterback. So he's going to keep pouring into that. Those guys are tough to find. Latu's coming on, but like you said, it makes perfect sense. If you're not going to get one of those guys, how do you make those guys better, right? You find a lockdown corner who can play on an island, who can get you into more man coverage, who can make the quarterback hold on to it a little bit longer. And then you got a guy like Kwity Paye who can get home. Latu can get home. Buckner's playing tremendous. So they got a bunch of guys, and this is him investing in his favorite position group, right, defensive line, by going out and getting a great corner.
Zach, who would you say are the Colts' 5 best defenders? The 5 best players on the Colts defense. If you were to ask Chris Ballard, if they had, I'll put it to you this way, if the NFL tomorrow decides to have they're going to put a team in Austin, Texas, and there's going to be an expansion draft, and they tell the Indianapolis Colts, we're doing it unusual this year. You cannot protect any players. Every player on your roster is open season. What are the 5 players on defense that Chris Ballard would be most worried are going to be plucked away because they're the 5 best defenders the Colts have?
I'm going to start with Buckner. He's been playing great.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Kenny Moore right behind him because he's so versatile.
Okay.
I'm tempted to throw Grover Stewart in there because he just bottles so much up.
Right.
Now the other guy is Ward, who's not playing right now.
Right.
And, I mean, come on, it's like a freak injury in a warm up. And I mean, Gardner's on there. Gardner's on there right
course.
now for sure.
And then Bynum, would he be the last one?
I would lean Zaire. I would
Okay.
lean Zaire Franklin because the linebackers are not great without him. But Bynum has been great as well. I mean, yeah, that's a good group.
Okay. So here's why I mention it. Everybody we mentioned but two were drafted elsewhere and then acquired by Indianapolis. Do we see that as a critique of Indianapolis or as a kudos to Chris Ballard for saying, you know what, it doesn't matter how you get them, you just got to go get them?
2 years ago, it's a fair and worthy critique. It absolutely is. I wrote it. I asked about it. It was very real. I don't want to knock Chris Ballard for certain things like the Kenny Moore move because Kenny Moore was nobody. He was cut from the Patriots, and, I mean, he's essentially a Colts draft pick, if that makes sense. He's essentially a guy who made his entire career in this city. He's been rewarded with 2 contracts. That matters. You know, the Buckner trade was gutsy. Like, that was gutsy at that time to send a first-round pick for defensive tackle. He's been one of the best in the league for the last 5 or 6 years. But right now, I think you're seeing the payoff for a shift in philosophy, for a GM who understood that he just wasn't getting it done in the secondary. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they drafted Rock Yassin in the 2nd round. Like, he was supposed to be a guy that was going to be here for a long time. And he just never became that guy. They have just not had success drafting and developing corners. And it's a brutal position. It's a huge injury rate. These guys always get hurt. And the guys that are really special, like the guys that are really, really, really good, are just, there's like 4 of them. There's like Surtain in Denver, and Sauce Gardner is one of those guys. And I loved watching and talking to Steph Gilmore when he was here. Now, the season was an utter disaster, but that guy was locked down for stretches, and he was even better before that in New England. But, again, that was a guy they brought in late, and he was good for them in a disastrous season. But for the most part, their success in the secondary has because they've gone out and got guys from other teams.
Crazy to say because he's only 25 years old, Zach, but and I'm not saying that I believe this, but I'm curious of what you hear elsewise because Zach Kiefer, you know, with The Athletic, you now are covering more than just the Colts. I mean, you're talking to and you're around different franchises. You can add probably even more perspective to the kaleidoscope. Did Sauce Gardner is he starting to show any hint whatsoever of that kind of dip that corners can go through?
You know what, Jake? He plays for the New York Jets, and I'm willing to just kind of throw out that context because it's like, how do you have success for that team? I mean, he was an All-Pro his first 2 seasons, and he hasn't been lately. Does that mean he's dipped? He doesn't have a lot of interceptions, but they also don't throw his way. So I feel like more than any other position besides maybe quarterback, you have to weigh the context of what's going on around them. I mean, the Jets defense, because their offense is so bad, is going to be on the field way more than your average defense. Now, the Colts see a really good player who they think can be great. And the other avenue look, they gave up 2 first-round picks, which is a lot, which is the most they've ever given up in the Ballard era. But this is a team that has 7 picks next year, and they'll probably turn those into 8 or 9, right? They always seem to do that. And the other part is the contract is kind of like stunningly manageable for the next 5 years. If you can get a lockdown corner, roughly $20 million a year, they're paying him hardly nothing this year. It just makes sense that that's a gamble worth taking. And then you piece together this secondary. So what does it look like right now, right? They're banged up all season. They've been playing with leads, which has helped. But they've got Gardner. They've got Kenny Moore on the inside. They've got, you know, Bynum and Nick Cross on the back end. I haven't even mentioned Ward, who's been tremendous. Like, all of a sudden, it's not crazy to say that could be one of the better secondaries in the NFL, which is something I haven't said about the Indianapolis Colts in God knows how long. So it's the piece to a puzzle. It's a piece to a puzzle, and the Colts knew. They knew this was not a player they were ever going to be able to get on the free agent market.
And would you agree with the fact that it symbolizes or would appear as though this is the last piece of evidence we need to know that they believe Daniel Jones is the quarterback of the future for them because they sent 2 first-rounders out?
Yeah. I mean, that was my second thought was, okay, you do not give up 2 first-round picks over the next 2 years if you think you're in the market for a quarterback. It's that simple. It screams that to me. I think you're going to look at a 3-year, let's say $110 million deal for Daniel Jones, right? I think they get it done before free agency starts. This is, Jake, barring a collapse, a terrible fall off the cliff type December for Daniel Jones. I don't see it happening. Everything they've said about the Pittsburgh game seems to think that, this guy is still our guy. There's nothing wavering in their thoughts. He still threw for 340 yards. I mean, he still had some really nice plays. Some of the interception turnovers weren't on him. Some of them certainly were. But I think, and this is going back to something Chris Ballard told me this summer, right? Is Daniel Jones going to be the long-term guy in Indy? I don't know. It's too early to know. But he said something interesting when we were talking about quarterbacks and young quarterbacks. He said, it's a lot easier to find the guy when you have a guy. So Daniel Jones is that guy right now that can be here for 3 or 4 years, who can get you to the playoffs, who can win you to the division, which is something the Colts haven't done in 11 years, right? That's a really nice thing to have in place while you search for the next young guy. They haven't had that luxury because they've been always churning through this wheel of quarterbacks looking for the next guy, which really put them in the position in 23 to just, we have to go get someone. We have to draft this kid, Anthony Richardson, right now because we like him more than Will Levis, which is just a terrible place to be in. So I think getting that done, which I think they will, barring a huge change, allows them flexibility to look for the long-term answer, whether it's him or some rookie that we don't even know about.
By the way, Zach, when you sign your name, do you go with the cursive Z or just the big like Zorro Z? Because that's a fun letter, but and the cursive Z is kind of a cool one to do, but I'm curious which you go with.
I do go with the cursive one. I do the cursive one. That looks like a 3.
Yeah, it's kind of fun though, right? I mean, and what's even more interesting about that is now, and I don't know if you know this, I just read yesterday an interesting statistic. 97.8% of all people under the age of 40 don't even know what the cursive Z is, right?
Yeah, I don't even think, like, my kids are learning to read and write in school right now, and I don't think they're going to learn cursive, which is kind of sad because there's a lot of cool letters that make for really cool autographs.
There's no question, right? All right, I was just curious about that. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Z. They're just like, I don't know if I had the initials. I used to wear all the time stuff with the letter Q, and then the QAnon folk came along and it ruined it all for me.
Oh, yeah, you're done.
I mean? Yeah.
You're done. Yeah,
I had a hat with just the letter Q on it, right? And I thought, well, this will be my hat. And all of a sudden, people started coming up to me and asking me about the Anunnaki and the aliens and stuff. And I'm like, what's going on here? And then
and you're already a guy that's like kind of into conspiracies to some degree, so that's just going to like further the reputation.
Kind of.
I'm not into
to some
conspiracies.
degree.
No. I'm a critical thinker, but I think all of these people are whack jobs. Is what I'm getting at.
Correct. But your hat's not. Your hat's not helping the case.
But by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but that JFK Jr. is going to be on the 32 ballot. Did you know that, Eddie? I don't know if you knew that or not. Okay, Zach. Before we let you go, since you are an NFL writer, one of my favorite things that I do. Okay. We're going to come up with 3 teams here. One is the team that you're like, I'm pretty sure that they're not very good, and I thought they were going to be. One is the team not named Indianapolis that you're like, I didn't think they were going to be good, but we now need to give them their flowers. They're good. And the third is, don't let the record fool you. The real version of them has yet to stand up. Let's begin with the first one, which is give me the team that you're like, I think there's now enough body of work to say it just ain't their year. They're not good this year.
I'm going to start with the team the Colts are playing Sunday in Berlin, like the Falcons. Like, what are the Falcons doing? Like, who are you? Like, what do you do well? Like, how do you beat the Bills on Monday night but then lose to the Panthers by 30? Like, they're just a team that if I was a Falcons fan, I would just be miserable because they have flashes of talent. They have one of the best players in the league in Bijan Robinson. Michael Penix throws a beautiful ball, but they just keep stubbing their toe. And I'm just like, they just keep running this cycle of mediocrity. And I just feel like, what are you? Like, what are you doing? Who are you?
Well, what's funny is, to go back to my question of the expansion, the theoretical expansion draft, the Falcons, at least offensively, might have 2 of like the top 20 players selected, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got some, they got some guys, right?
But they just they have no system identity, and there are games where Bijan doesn't get many touches / doesn't produce, and it's just like I feel like they get up the big games and then they'll have a dud every other Sunday, and it's just like I just hate the teams that are not consistent.
Right.
Be something every week, and they're just so easy not to believe in.
Okay, now give me a team that at the beginning of the year you anticipated they were going to be a legit playoff contender, and you look at it now and they've gotten to a slow start, and you say, you know what, I think we just need to accept the fact. Like Atlanta's enigmatic, right? Give me the one that you're now definitive. You're like, I can pull the Miles Turner and close the book on them this year.
That's tough because it's just so hard to, like, I'm tempted to say KC because now that's not to say I don't believe in them making the playoffs, but the road is going to be really hard. Like, if you look at that division, the Chiefs are in third place in the division. They're losing all these one-score games after going 11-0 in one-score games last year. The offense is good. The defense is good, and it's leaky. And they gotta beat the Chargers. The Broncos keep winning. The Broncos keep winning these one-score games. And I'm telling you right now, it would not stun me if the Chiefs are in some do-or-die games in let's say early January, late December, that they have to win to make in the playoffs. And again, they could lose in a couple of weeks to the Colts because they're going to have to stop Jonathan Taylor. And the Colts, and I was in KC this summer, and I was talking with some of the KC writers, and they said, you know which team has sort of been a kryptonite for Patrick Mahomes? The Indianapolis Colts.
Only team he has yet to beat in the regular season, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Think about the quarterbacks that have beat Mahomes from the Colts. Jacoby Brissett in that 19-9 game on Sunday Night Football where Marlon Mack went crazy. Matt Ryan, first win as an Indianapolis Colts quarterback. One of his only wins as a Colts quarterback was a win over Patrick Mahomes at Lucas Oil Stadium. So there's this strange hex. Now, I know Mahomes won the playoff game against Luck years ago, but I'm not sold on KC being in the dance this year.
Okay, Washington to me is intriguing because the Commanders are one that I know that Daniels has been hurt, but I look at Washington and I go, I thought they were going to be decent, and I think now we can say that they're not very good. Agreed?
Yeah, I was there in camp, and I'm telling you, Jake, they were saying, like, this is the most anticipated season for this team in 25 years.
Yeah.
And I believed it. But the reality is they gave up 55 points in the NFC Championship game. The defense wasn't good last year. They played a really soft schedule. They won some games late. Jaden was great, but he's been hurt. And it was just kind of like a comeback to life year. You could kind of feel it in the preseason that they were just not going to be there as NFC contenders at the end.
Okay, lastly, Zach, I don't know if you've ever done this, but you go to a discount store and you see the detergent and you're like, wow, tied for $1.99. I got to buy that. And then you get home and you realize what you bought was Tita. And like the A looks like the E, right? And you're like, okay, looks like detergent, but not. Give me the team that by record, they look like a contender, but deep down you do a deep look at it and you go, yeah, no, fool's gold.
I'm tempted to say Baltimore, and I know their record is not saying they're a contender, but look at their schedule. They're going to go on a run here. They're going to go on a run because they don't play anyone good for the next 5 or 6 weeks. I'm not ruling out like a 7-1, 8-1 midseason run from Lamar Jackson. I still don't trust the defense, and I think that first game in Buffalo was an omen. I think the way they collapsed was an omen. I just don't think even if they get past Pittsburgh might be another answer. I still don't believe in Pittsburgh. I just don't believe in these AFC North teams, but I just don't think Baltimore has the stuff to get over the hump this year, even if they make this great run and have a lot of people talking about how hot they are going into January.
Okay, I'll go with, man, I hate to say this because I like them, but I'll go with Seattle on this one.
They're good. They're good.
I like them, and listen, I think it's a great story and what Darnold's doing there and their uniform. I mean, I've always kind of liked Seattle, but I'm just, for whatever reason, I have a hard time accepting it.
Well, they're the second best team in the division. I think the Rams are one of the best teams in the league, and no one's talking about it. I'm kind of surprised you didn't say the Colts. I mean, 7-2. Does it feel like they're 7-2? They beat up a lot of bad teams.
The Colts we're going to find out here, right? I mean, it's going to get real once they get back from Germany, and then you got that stretch where you got Kansas City, Houston and Jacksonville, but you have Seattle, who I mentioned, in San Francisco right there as you turn into December. So we'll see. We're going to find out, right?
Yeah, and I think Houston's really big for this team. And I know that the Texans don't have a good record this year, but that's the biggest speed bump in the division over the last couple of years. Jacksonville's a good team as well, but I think the mental hurdle of making those final few plays in games against the Texans is really big. Remember, a lot of those games came down to 1 or 2 plays, and the Texans always made them. So if the Colts get over that hump, I'm going to start to buy them.
Zach, I'll see you at the starting line for the Drumstick Dash, and by the time we get to Broader Pultans, you'll be long ahead of me, but I'll at least see you at the starting line.
I'll give you an autograph afterward with that fancy Z.
That's right. I'll check out the cursive Z. It's been a while since I've seen one. Appreciate it as
Thanks,
always,
man.
man. All right, Zach Kiefer from The Athletic joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour Gas Line. Keep in mind, Jake25, the discount code for 25% off at Java House, and use my name, first or last name, or simply 1075 The Fan in the search bar, and it will take you to the Fan Bundle, which is Wrangler Energy, the Liquid Science, whether it be Arctic Freeze or Orange Hydration drink. Put that right in water after workout. Fabulous. And, of course, the Colombian cold brew coffee also works with hot brew coffee if that is your choice. Last night I was in Bloomington. Hoosiers, Darren DeVries, and his debut as the head basketball coach at Indiana. We will discuss next. So last night, thank you to Zach Kiefer, by the way, went down to Bloomington. I had to think about this. And it doesn't really have any bearing or impact on the analysis of the basketball team, other than to say, when I was, and I think everybody knows this, I mean, growing up, my sports fandom, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 was Indiana basketball. I loved the Pacers for certain, but all of it was a fraction compared to the level of almost cult-like following that I had for Indiana basketball. And part of Indiana basketball, and when I say Indiana basketball, I mean IU, Indiana University. Part of what, as an IU fan the glory years back in Coach Knight, in that era, but part of it, to buy into all of that, and people that watched it back then will understand what I mean, there was this appreciation and love and almost pride in the fact that it was the program that was the anomaly. It was the program that, and I mean, you didn't have NIL and all that stuff and transfer portal and all that in the 80s, 90s, into the early 2000s. But Indiana Assembly Hall had a simplicity about it. It had a purity about it. It was just one scoreboard that told you the score and the clock. And then it was a pep band and one operatic guy that came out and did the national anthem. And that was it. And obviously, over the course of time, that has all changed for the better. I mean, it's not a bad thing. But the point simply being that when you go to a game now,
Chuck Crabb on the mic.
Chuck Crabb,
sophomore.
That's exactly correct. I mean, the simplicity of it all, right? I mean, Chuck Crabb is it's a perfect point, Eddie, I should have mentioned.
3-point basket, 3 points.
And then my favorite tradition every year, twice a year, the Indiana State Police reminds us that snow has fallen over the course of the game. Please drive carefully. And all of it, it made Indiana, there was a difference about it. And you go to a game now, and there's a massive scoreboard and hype videos and a DJ playing and the Bison running around. And I got to admit, I'm kind of down with the Bison. I'm cool with the Bison. I'm in on mascots. What's that?
Did you meet the Bison?
I did not meet the Bison.
Did you meet Mike Nizilik yesterday?
You know what? I did not. I saw Zach Osterman.
Okay.
And I didn't see, and I was in the press room also. Saw Anthony Calhoun.
Look at you.
Did not see Nizilik. But we went down, and the long-winded point I'm making is this. Change is inevitable, even with the things that we consider to be the most traditional. And forever, for example, with Indiana, it has been about, hey, we don't need signage and we don't need glitz and glamour. And the uniforms are traditional, and the name on the front's more important than the name on the back. And all of that, I get it. And the last thing there that I mentioned is kind of the last sacred ground of no names on the back of the jersey. And I have to admit, last night as I was watching it, I was watching the Bison running around, and at one point, and I went with Dr. White, my high school principal and a pillar of this city, and he is or at least at the time of his graduation, I don't know about now, but he was the all-time leading scorer at Alabama A&M in basketball. And he's in their Athletic Hall of Fame, and that's who Indiana was playing last night. And so we go to the game, and he's wanting to see Alabama A&M, but he knows basketball through and through and through and coached all of it and everything else. So he also knows Indiana basketball and about IU, and we're watching it. And at one point he says to me, now, who is the number 4 for Indiana, which is Sam Alexis? And I'm thinking, I'm not certain. And they don't have names on the back. And it almost feels like they need them because the roster itself for Indiana, it is entirely redone. Now, Trent Sisley, obviously a true freshman in that regard, but Reed Bailey and Tayton Conaway and Lamar Wilkerson and Connor Enright, these are all new faces that it almost seems fitting because everything just feels new if you are like me of the old traditional guard at Indiana. And that's not a bad thing. In terms of the way that they played, let me begin with this. Lamar Wilkerson will be a guy that Indiana fans are going to love. Now, Connor Enright has kind of that TJ McConnell element about him. Who was the kid at Ohio State that everybody couldn't stand, that had the
Aaron
rosy
Kraft?
cheeks? Aaron Kraft. Chris Kramer, the bulldog type. We were driving down, and Dr. White and I are talking about basketball and sports in general, and like when he was a player, and he said to me, he's like, man, so many guys you can see the physical gifts, but they just don't have that dog in them. And he's like, that's what I love about TJ McConnell for the Pacers. He's just a dog, And Kobe Bryant was just a dog. And Connor Enright feels that way for Indiana. But the entire roster, the two things that I noticed last night in Darren DeVries' group, number one, it is true they have multiple players that can shoot. Tucker DeVries does not need a lot of time to get to get a good look on the three-point line. And Lamar Wilkerson has an ability, he has a ball handling quickness that allows him to step back and get himself. He can create his own look. But he doesn't need Wilkerson to create, and I could tell it right now, he's a lightning in a bottle shooter. He is. Lamar Wilkerson, dare I say it, has a little bit of Carson Edwards in him, where he is a heat check guy where all of a sudden it's like, here it comes, and you could just tell he can score in bunches. And I think this year for Indiana, you're going to see times where Lamar Wilkerson is scoring in bunches for them. And Enright is the guy that's kind of the antagonist defensively and also just kind of lifts people with this demeanor about him, kind of the dog, right? And DeVries is a guy, Tucker DeVries, that he doesn't need a lot of time. I mean, he can come off a curl and turn and shoot and doesn't need a lot of time to have to square himself. The rest of the roster, what I noticed is they space themselves very well. They move the ball. They do a very good job. And I don't know that this is going to be the case. I mean, they played Alabama A&M, right? I mean, they were up 30 by the second time out of the game. But they space themselves well. They all can shoot, but they also are constantly moving. And it was a breath of fresh air at Indiana after having watched a stagnant offense and just a lackluster performance, not just under Mike Woodson in the latter years, but the Archie Miller era, all of it. Defensively, they are very intense. Alabama A&M scored on a backdoor cut on the first possession of the game, and that literally felt like the only defensive real lapse that Indiana had. Now, Alabama A&M did not have much lateral speed at all, so it's very difficult to determine who they're going to be like in the Big Ten play itself. And I thought Indiana and Darren DeVries kept their key players in a little bit longer than he should have. However, they are new to one another. They're learning how to play with one another, and so therefore there probably is more necessity of keeping your core on the floor in a mop-up game like that than there would be if this is a group that had played together for 3 years. And in addition, Tucker DeVries was going for his 2,000th career point, albeit of the 2,000 career points, like I think he needed 15 maybe or 16 going into last night. So, 1,984 of them came elsewhere. But going for that, I think they wanted to get that out of the way, and so they had him on the floor for 5 to 6 minutes longer to get him that basket to then honor, hey, he has 2,000 points and whatever else. But overall assessment of it would be this. Number one, I kind of dig the Bison. I think the Bison's kind of cool. He gets people amped, and he looks like he might be an instigator. But in terms of the way that they play, like the way they spaced, really good ball movement. The ball does not stick anywhere long. They do not go down on the block, and the ball gets buried. They very clearly, Indiana is going to want to, on each possession, if they can get an open three within the first 2 to 3 passes, they're going to do so. And then if that doesn't work, they're going cut or they're going rotation quickly. And I think people will enjoy that. Wilkerson, bunching scores and can quick score off the dribble, an exciting guy, and I think that's the guy that's going to be their energy guy. And then DeVries is the one that has the most versatility of his skill set. That Sam Alexis looked pretty good too, though. I don't think he started, if I'm not mistaken. He started his career at Chattanooga, then at Florida, now at Indiana. So new names, new faces all over the place. Eddie, when's the last time you went to a game, if at all, at Assembly Hall?
It's been a few years, probably 3 or 4, if I had to guess.
We went through, and I'm grateful for it and appreciative. Jeremy Gray took us through with Dr. White to see the different aspects of, Cook Hall and the weight room. We went through the weight room. I mean, we got to see a lot of the facilities of Indiana, and
it's just hard
been
for
a while
me
since I've been
because
able
of
to
Pacers,
do that.
Because the season overlaps.
I get it. Well, like last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, we'll get back into that Pacers side of things, and Sauce Gardner will play you a little more of the things that he had to say between now and 2:30, because at 2:30, Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, will join. Eddie, you just made an interesting observation. Two of them, actually, which is one. Let alone one is shocking enough, but two is like holy cow, right?
Thank you.
And your observation was, number one, that Indiana, and by Indiana I mean the university, and the way that they played last night and what we've seen so far from Darren DeVries' style, it is a little bit similar to the Pacers play, right?
Yeah, based on granted, I didn't get to watch it closely like you did because the Pacers were going on at the same time, but I was trying to flip back and forth just to be able to say, hey, let me see what the new Hoosiers look like with Darren DeVries. And from what I could see, and I've seen some clips on social media as well, they're very comparable in terms of how they want to play offensively to the Pacers. They want to move the basketball around, generate a lot of open looks, dribble drive penetration. Everyone on the floor can shoot and has the green light to shoot a three. And they're going to pass the ball, move it around, and it'll be a fun, brand of basketball, hopefully.
Another thing that I think is parallel, and I'm curious what IU fans think of this. The NBA, a couple of years ago, came up with that in-season tournament. Whether they admitted it was because of this or not, I don't know. But the reality is the in-season tournament for the NBA was to generate or recapture interest during and concurrently with the NFL season. Because for so many people...
NBA season?
What's that?
For the NBA season?
For the NFL season.
Oh.
Because for so many people, the NBA knew that to a lot of fans, the NBA wasn't on their radar until the NFL season was concluding.
Christmas, yeah.
So by coming up with the in-season tournament, you now had people that were watching and paying attention in November and December that otherwise would not have. Because in this town, for example, the Pacers and the Colts, and we have had times where both of them have been outstanding. And you have a lot of people, hey, are you a big Pacer fan? Man, I love the Pacers, but I really start paying attention once the Colts season is over. That kind of a narrative. For years, and when I say for years, I'm talking about like from the era when Teddy Roosevelt was president until now, okay? I mean, for years, Indiana University, from a football standpoint, was non-existent. It was nothing more than the background of a practice for breaking away when they were filming the movie, Lee Corso taking one photo, Bill Mallory giving a glimpse of an era, and the rest of it being a disaster. And that's now completely changed. And when you have the basketball program falling out of not favor, but patience with the fan base, combined with this newfound instantaneous overnight, what in the world, Indiana competing with Ohio State level football, does that mean that the basketball program, I'm not going to say is the back burner to football. And yes, you would like to see it be a school where both sports are of marquee. But I was surprised last night to go into Assembly Hall. And I know they're playing Alabama A&M. But it's the season opener. The season opener for Indiana University basketball. And there couldn't have been 8,000 people there. And I get the balcony. It's been hard to sell tickets up there anyway because the game's a rumor from there as it is. But the last third of the lower level was empty. And I know a lot of those tickets have been sold and people just didn't want to make the drive down or whatever else. But how much of that is because people are so swept up and caught up in the football program? Good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. Good problem to have. But I'm down. I'm kind of down with that Bison. Looks like an instigator.
Is that why you're down? Because you're also an instigator?
Yes. He's kind of cool. He's kind of cool. Dr. White at one point said, why the Bison? And I said, well, I think it's because of the state seal. There's a bison that's leaping over the little, while the guy's chopping down the tree. But the Bison, he looks a little Teen Wolfish. He looks kind of like the Teen Wolf fella. We have tickets to give away for Gunther Steiner, right? November 14th?
We do. A week from Friday.
An evening with Gunther Steiner, unfiltered, by the way. You have seen it. You've heard him on this radio program. You've seen him, of course, talking about Formula One in the Netflix documentary In Drive to Survive. And he's got all kinds of stories. If you're a race fan in particular, you're going to love it because he's got stories about running Formula One teams and running, whether it be Haas, whether it be coming over and working for a while in the NASCAR side of things, firing drivers, hiring drivers, all of it. At Clues Hall, November 14th. Eddie, you would like to give these away in what fashion?
Let's do it through the text line this time, Jake.
I like that. So at 239-1070, 317-239-1070. Is that right?
That's correct. What should we do? We should do a trivia question, though, in some capacity.
Okay. Would you like me to come up with a question, or would you like to?
Well, your noggin is full of trivia, Jake. I mean, you've got the Lou Gehrig thing tonight, right?
I do. Live Like Lou Foundation, raising money for the battle against ALS and to end ALS and to uplift those that have been involved in that journey as well. We've got the trivia for that. So I could give a trivia question. Okay, here's the easiest one. It is a racing-related question that tonight is one of them that I've come up with, so I'm giving sneak peek if you're going to be there tonight. And the first person to correctly give this answer at the text line of 239-1070, we will give you the tickets. And here's the question. There are two drivers, only two, whose names appear on the Borg Warner Trophy, which of course means that you have won the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Tony Holman, the only non-winner on the trophy. But there are two drivers whose names appear on the Borg Warner Trophy in multiple variations. The first is Al Unser Sr., because the first three times that his name is on the trophy, it just says Al Unser. Then on the fourth victory that he had, it says Al Unser Sr. There is one other driver who is a multiple winner whose name appears in multiple variations. If you know that answer, the first person to text the answer at 317-239-1070, Eddie's going to hook you up. Good afternoon to you on a Thursday. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program. Query and Company is what we call it. And we are more than happy to have all of you within the listening audience as members of our company. And we certainly don't take lightly the fact that that makes it possible for us to come in each and every day and talk sports, have fun. Hopefully not take ourselves too seriously.
You may have fun, Jake.
Like I said, not take ourselves too seriously. The Gunter Steiner tickets have been given away, and I believe it was Darren that knew first, correct?
Yeah, Darren did know first.
The
Correct.
other driver whose name appears on the Borg Warner in more than one variation is that of Juan Montoya, also known as Juan Pablo Montoya, the second time that he won the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Yep.
So Darren is on his way.
Talk about good personalities for the sport.
Montoya?
Yeah.
Montoya was, I think, Eddie, in my time, it is my belief, but in my time in covering it, now, and when I say that, I mean being involved in seeing practices and just watching all of it, I believe personally that Juan Montoya is the most natural talent to have run the Indy 500 certainly of the 2000s. I want to begin real quick before we get into the Colts and Sauce Gardner in the mix, and now we can hear from Sauce a little bit, but I want to begin by something I said at the beginning of the show. By now, most of you probably know this part of it, but this information came to us just before we came on the show today. And 97% of this program typically is from a local standpoint. But there are certain stories that happen on a national standpoint that I think do resonate or connect locally. Marshawn Neeland is a second-year player, or was a second-year player for the Dallas Cowboys, who just had his first career touchdown, even though he's a defender, on a special teams touchdown this past weekend. And this morning, most people probably woke up to the news, if whatever your sports outlet news information is, that Marshawn Neeland had passed away, and they're at the age of 24. And just before we came on, it was the question of just, gosh, a 24-year-old person, you wonder then, how did he pass? Was this a car accident? Was it a heart issue? Was it, when it's somebody that young, you wonder, was there something that, are they going to do a toxicology? Just before we came on, the police departments in Texas had issued the information that last night there was the police attempted to pull over a vehicle. It did not pull over. There was a pursuit. The car got away. The law enforcement then ended the pursuit, then later found a crashed vehicle which matched that of the pursuit, and at that point found the body of Marshawn Neeland, who had died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the only reason, not the only, but I brought that up earlier, right before we went on. I brought it up on the show only because that information, in terms of how he had passed away, had come out just before we went on the air. And I was under the assumption, because I know how, interested people are in the National Football League, that people were probably naturally curious as to what was the cause of death. And then, because you start talking about CTE and different things when you hear about a young person passing away. The only reason I'm bringing it back up now is because in this town and with this franchise with the Colts, there has been, and I applaud the Colts for this, the Kicking the Stigma initiative of the Colts about being upfront and talking about mental health. And, I think everybody goes through at times in their life challenges or frustrations or disappointments, in this time of year. Quite frankly, this time of year, depression as well. And whether that be circumstantial, whether that be neurological, any number of things. And while I have been very fortunate, I have dealt in the past with circumstantial depression, but I've been very fortunate that's never been anything other than, in the grand scheme of things, fleeting or passing periods. But I do know that there are plenty of people that, chemically speaking, deal with that on a regular basis, and it's an ongoing challenge. And I think, and I don't know in this case with Marshawn Nealand, I have no idea whether or not this suicide was because of the police chase or because of something going on in his life. I have no idea. I'm simply saying it's a conduit to bring in the conversation of the fact on this radio station of simply letting people know the following. If you are somebody who is going through a difficult period or a period of depression, it is never forever, and there are numerous groups and outlets and people and facilities and programs that can help you in that journey. And it's oftentimes when you're in that darkness impossible to gather that there are people with the flashlight. But by all means, I would encourage any of you, if you're going through that, to be aware of those things, to know that you are not in any way, shape, or form alone in your struggle and in your journey, that there are people that understand that. If you are ever in a situation where you need to know where those programs and outlets are, I've given my number out on this radio station numerous times at 317-523-9288. And by no means am I a professional in that regard, but I would certainly be willing to help anybody find the resources or the outlets possible to help them in that moment. 317-523-9288. And so long as it's not during the 4.5 hours of the night that I'm asleep, I would always be willing and have in the past, tried to help people out in that regard. Secondly, I simply want to point along and pass along. You never know what other people are going through. And so if you are somebody who, like me, by the grace of God, does not battle with those things, it's not to say there's not someone close to you that does. And simply please be aware and awake of that understanding. Sauce Gardner is now an Indianapolis Colt. He is going to play, because he has passed concussion protocol, for the Colts in their game coming up against the Atlanta Falcons in Berlin. Now, he today, for the first time, we got a chance. It's not the first time he's talked to the media, obviously, but it is the first time that he has talked with the media as a member of the Indianapolis Colts. And the first question that I think a lot of people wanted to know about him was this. You're coming out of University of Cincinnati. You're a top-flight draft pick. You are basically a lockdown corner. You're an all-pro level player. And yet you're with the franchise in the New York Jets that seems to take one step forward, two steps back, and has had a disastrous year so far this year. Does that mean, Sauce Gardner, that you requested a trade? Did you ask out of New York? Sauce Gardner on that.
No, I've never asked for a trade. I don't think that's something that I will ever do. It's a blessing to just be able to play on Sundays, at the end of the day. So, that's what make it even much more beautiful, going through those tough times, those rough times and things like that. And then, things could change in a matter of a night. So I enjoyed my time in New York. Just want to give a shout out to, the guys that were there that drafted me, and the guys that was there, obviously, when I got my extension and everything like that, and my teammates who I went through so much with.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is that players, I think, sometimes are measured by not necessarily what they're doing, but how they were acquired or where they were acquired. I call it the Alex Smith syndrome, because Alex Smith was drafted as the number 1 overall selection in the NFL draft by San Francisco, and he struggled in San Francisco. And then he ends up in Kansas City and Washington and was a really nice player, really good player, nice quarterback. But with those other two franchises, the measuring stick was different because they didn't spend a number 1 overall pick on him. So for Sauce Gardner, even though there was a lot invested with him in New York, not only on where he was acquired, but the investment they made in extending him, now he goes to a place that everybody knows this is the sign of a push-in because they've given not 1 but 2 first-round picks as well as A.D. Mitchell to get him. So Sauce' question is, does that create a pressure knowing what was surrendered to bring you to Indianapolis?
There's no pressure. They got access to the tape, so they know what I'm capable of doing. And that's what makes it much more special. It was less about the Jets wanting to trade me and more about the Colts wanting me to be here. So, that's truly a blessing. And, it's a great group of guys already here. And that's what makes it even more special, like a dominant offense, dominant defense, and grateful to be a part of something special that they were already building here. And, I look to just add a lot on and off the field here.
Today is Thursday. The trade deadline was Tuesday. The deadline was at 4 o'clock. It was about 12:40, I'm guesstimating, 12:38, somewhere like that, where I'm sitting here and I'm talking on the radio. I think we might have even gone to a commercial break, and all of a sudden
we're in a break. I know that.
Eddie Garrison goes,
"Holy bleep.
Whoa," and jumped out of his seat. I said, "What?" And he said, "The Colts just traded for Sauce Gardner." And I said, "Okay." And we came out of the break and went right into it. We were talking about being in Berlin, and I was talking about German sauces, and then I made the line of, look, I can't remember the exact phrase. If the Colts are trying to buy real estate now within the AFC title, they just took care of it, and they brought in the Gardner. And Sauce Gardner's on his way here, and we both were kind of live on the fly figuring out, where do we go from here, because this is a seismic deal that the Colts have just made, going after and getting one of the best defenders in the National Football League. We were shocked by it. So the question becomes, what about on the other side and the guy that was the epicenter? Sauce Gardner, were you also shocked to hear of the trade that brings you to Indianapolis from New York?
I'm not going to lie, I didn't even have time to, process it all the way. I just knew, I was coming into a great situation. So, I was running in circles in the house because the first thing I'm thinking, bro, I'm about to be back with my boy Alec. They winning right now, so I just know what I can add. I was happy, but at the same time, I didn't have no time to be dang, I'm getting traded right now. I was just all good vibes because at the end of the day, who gonna feel sorry? That's part of the business. Just like these last couple of days, I've been having to learn the playbook at a pace that I didn't know I was capable of learning the playbook. So, but who gonna feel sorry for me? Nobody. Yeah, I'm not gonna say shocked was the word, because I know that what the coach offered was something that was hard to pass up on, especially how it's been over the years. So it made sense.
So you heard him mention there his boy Alec. That's Alec Pierce. Sauce Gardner grew up in Michigan, went to the University of Cincinnati, and was lined up often against Alec Pierce in practice because they were Bearcats together. So the question would become, or the assumption would be, that immediately Sauce Gardner, as soon as he hears Indianapolis Colts, he thinks Alec Pierce there, boom, picks him up, calls him. Sauce Gardner on how long that took in his conversation with Alec Pierce.
Man, he was so happy. Everybody throughout the building was always saying, he always spoke highly of me. And obviously that made it easier for me to be here. And obviously everybody already knew who I was as a person and a player. I would just tell them, bro, I'm not going to be brother-in-law in you in practice and stuff like that. We always joke and things like that. So, no, it was just great. He was super pumped. I think he called me before our GM called me. But like I said, I was laying down with my girl, so I wasn't picking the phone up at that time. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was about. I kind of wish I would have answered the call, because I kind of would have knew. But, I got the call before my agent got the call. I got the call before anybody got the call. So, it was great to just find out from them in a great way.
By the way, his girlfriend is Ice Spice, right?
Correct.
So does that mean, if they got married and he went super progressive and he took her last name, does he then become Sauce Spice? Is that right? That's right?
That would be correct.
That's kind of fun, right?
Wouldn't Ice Gardner?
Yeah, that's
be called IG.
Yeah, that's not bad either, right? Sounds very likable. And, does this mean that I know or that we know Sauce Gardner? Of course not. But I think it goes back to what Janae Coakley was telling us when we had her on right after the trade. Janae Coakley, formerly of Wish Television, that is now with SNY in New York, covers the Jets, and she was saying that he is a, professional through and through. What did she say? Like, deep in the playbook, video, dedicated to his craft kind of guy. And that's what, look, it's what you hope for, especially when you're making that move, and there's very little we can say about what the move means for the Colts and what it symbolizes that has not already been said. But now you got to have results on the field. And it starts, at least the first test of seeing how it's going to look coming up in Germany on Sunday. Now, when do the Colts leave for Berlin? Do we know?
Tonight. So they will fly tonight, sleep on the plane, practice tomorrow. And they'll land it'll be a.m. in Berlin on Friday when they land.
That's not the easiest thing in the world, that sleep on the plane deal. And I realize they're not exactly sitting in Southwest B39, right? But still.
I'm sure that their seats are you can probably lay down.
I think the only time that I have flown on an NFL plane years ago when I was in St. Louis, I covered the Rams. And the Rams had a Christmas Eve game in New Orleans. And the Rams franchise, I thought this was very kind of them. And there are certainly journalistic integrity questions that could come into play here. But the Rams franchise went to those of us in the local media and said, look, it's Christmas Eve. And there are no flights back to St. Louis from New Orleans until like 4 p.m. on Christmas Day. And since we are flying as a team back after the game, if you are covering the team, you can fly back on the team flight. And so I did, there were like 8 of us that did. Now, we were in the back of the plane. The plane is quartered off or sectioned off, where you had the team was in the front, third of the plane, and then like probably coaches right behind them. And then the back third of the plane, which is where I was, were sponsors and, probably marketing people, and then like the local media that were on it. So we were on basically a normal section of the plane. But you could see the front section of the plane, and all of the seats were the size of first-class seats. And I think, certainly from the NBA, because you have fewer people, that's how it is. So, yes, it's a little bit different than, I think I told you one time, what's the longest flight you've been on, Eddie?
Ooh. 5 hours?
Okay. Now most planes, if you're on a flight that long, they have the in-flight entertainment in the seat in front of you. The back of it has a little TV screen on it, and you can watch movies, whatever else. The two things to me where I've been the most incredulous with that, I once flew to, it was a long flight, and it was an evening flight from Hawaii back to, like L.A., so it's like 5 or 6 hours, and it was at night. And this was back in the era where they would show a movie, but they would have one screen, and you would get the headsets. And the movie they showed, so it's like midnight. And the movie they showed was Stuart Little, which I found odd. I was the only person watching it with my headsets on. Everybody else was sleeping, and I was watching Stuart Little, which seemed a little odd for a late-night movie. But then I also had, Eddie, I think I told you recently, I was on a flight where the movie – they had the in-flight movies, and I'm like, oh, and now it's you pick your own. I mean, it's like 100 options, and they had Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and I had a young kid sitting next to me, and it was the unedited. So I think he wanted me to rewind the Phoebe Cates scene like 6 times. It's like a 12-year-old kid sitting next to me, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, this is the unedited version. I mean, I thought for sure, that we were gonna like suddenly cut away or something, and I'm like, oh no. There was no blurring whatsoever. Phoebe in all her glory. And I'm like, whoa. Felt a little uncomfortable. I mean.
You felt uncomfortable?
I was fine with it, but I was like, I don't know. Like,
You know what I have to say to that, Jake?
Where our focus goes, our energy flows.
No, that's about what happened. I can tell you with him, the focus and there was focus flowing and growing and all of it, right? No question about it. Matt Taylor is the voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Mercifully joins us next. Matt Taylor is the radio play-by-play voice of the Indianapolis Colts. Joins us typically each and every Thursday to preview the Colts' upcoming game opponent. He's on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. And we'll begin here, Matt. I want to say, and I don't know which of our conversations in the past it's been where this has come up, but I have this weird memory of you at some point mentioning that along the way, whether it be high school or college, you took German classes. Am I wrong in that?
Good memory. I took four years of German in high school.
How much of that do you remember?
I can kind of piece it together. German, I think, is a very, from what I understand, right? I don't know any other languages, but from my understanding, German is a very easy language to learn, and a lot of English is sort of a cousin or a distant relative of German. And so, it's funny. We had to do so in German class. We had to do a quarter project every quarter. So every 9 weeks, we had to do a project in German class, and you could do whatever you want, right? You could do an essay or an oral project, or you could do a video. So I used to have an old tape cassette player, and I would record myself doing Don Fisher. So it was like the Mike Davis show. So I was Don Fisher talking in German and interviewing Mike Davis, and then I would pretend like I was Mike Davis answering the questions in German, being asked to him as Don Fisher.
Can you give us a quick rendition of Don Fisher in German?
Willkommen, everybody. This ist Mike Davis Schauer und Indiana University Basketball spielst du gern und 3 Punkte victory über Purdue last Nacht.
Now hold on. Now this seems almost like cheating because basically you just took a bunch of words and then added like an unta to it, right?
I thought he cussed. I think did I need to hit the dump button there?
Yeah.
That was welcome to the Mike Davis Show. Indiana University basketball last night beat Purdue University by 3 points.
Okay. That's not bad. That's solid. Yeah. I mean, I'm grading your German more than your Don Fisher, but that's not bad. That's pretty solid, actually, right?
Well, yeah, I think the Fisher took a hit because I was so focused on the German part of it.
Now, how much, when you go over, you know what, Matt, how much of the pregame can you do in German?
Not a lot. I mean, I can do bare bones. I mean, God, I took it 25 years ago, high school wise. So I mean, I can do like the basic stuff. I remember like the very basic stuff, like how to have like a first grade conversation, like how you doing, what do you do in your free time?
Well, that's perfect for this show.
That's right.
Now,
so Jake, was machst du gern in deiner Freizeit? That's what do you do in your free time? Ich liebste Spielster ist Zaire Franklin. That's my favorite player, Zaire Franklin. So, just basic stuff here and there just to get by.
When I was in college, I mentioned this before, I took Swahili when I was at Indiana. I took literally – I did. I took 3 semesters. I needed 4 semesters of a foreign language. I needed 2 different foreign languages. I started in Spanish, took 2 years of that. And then I went in and said, well, what's the easiest language on campus? And they said Bambara. And so I took Bambara, which is an African clicking language, that thing. And 2 weeks in, the grad student that was teaching it, I think there was some clerical issue. And so that was no longer offered. And I said, what's the second easiest language? Swahili. And I'm not kidding you. For a brief window there, I was probably like communicatively fluent in Swahili. But yes, wow. You kind of forget it. It's a very simple language because they use like one word for like entire, whatever. But yes, you do forget it over time. But I would love to go somewhere where they speak it and see if it comes back at all. And I'll be curious when you're in Germany if you find yourself being able to understand stuff more than you would have guessed.
Yeah, the thing, so we were there 2 years ago. The biggest thing that came flooding back was like the pronouns, because the pronouns are different for, like, there's a female pronoun and there's male pronouns, obviously, right? So, like, hopefully I get this right, and hopefully my German teacher isn't like throwing a tomato at the radio right now. But like for a female, it's like Dinah. So everything for a female ends with an E. So Dinah, and then if I were referring to something else from a noun standpoint, but it was like a connotative, like for a male, it would be diner. So what I just asked you is like was machst du gern and diner Freizeit. So your is diner, free time is Freizeit. So yeah, it's just like little things like that just came flooding back in terms of the language and how it works and how it's set up.
Okay.
And how it's supposed to be like a sentence diagram.
So let me ask you this. Does that mean that a female entertainer on the beach in Germany is a Dinah Shore? Is that right?
It would be. Yeah,
Okay.
could be. Yeah,
Okay.
Dinah, yeah. It ends with an E if it's a female.
Listen, Matt, we're supposed to have you here to talk about, obviously, the Colts, so let's get right to it. I want to know what you think. The Colts, over the course of the week, had a major acquisition in terms of their defensive backfield, so let's get right to it. Your thoughts on safety Trey Washington joining the practice squad?
Hey, man, you got to have everybody.
You're right.
Have everybody, right?
No, Sauce Gardner, do you believe, Matt, in talking about it, I heard him saying that he's diving right into the playbook, and this guy seems to be pretty dialed in, but is corner the one position that a guy can be airdropped in and immediately acclimate? I'm not saying it's easy, right? But if you're going to put a guy in there and just say, okay, go and do what you got to do based on instinct before you really get to know what it is that we do, is corner one of the positions where you can kind of get away with that until a guy's up to speed?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. I mean, especially in a game like this when they have such a clear number one wide receiver in the Falcons and Drake London. We'll see how that sort of manifests itself with, a shadow possibility with Sauce Gardner on London. Those guys have, by the way, just anecdotally, they have faced off one time, ironically overseas. It was 2 years ago in London, and Sauce Gardner did a great job on him. I think he only gave up like one catch for less than 10 yards. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, although I don't think the Colts are going to put him out there if they don't feel comfortable in his ability to grasp the defense. And that's what Sauce Gardner said today. I know you played some of the clips just now, but he's like, hey, this is my job to be out there and to be on top of all this stuff. I know those guys out there, playing around them, guys like Cam Bynum and Kenny Moore, they're going to be over-communicative to help him and to put him in the right spots and to, have him be on top of checks and things like that. But he's like, I don't need any of that. It shouldn't be their job. It should be my job to know the defense. So he said he was actually looking forward to the plane ride with, 8 or 9 hours on the plane just to kind of focus on football, because the last 48 hours for him has been everything but football with, moving and, a playbook and, signing papers and, everything that comes with the trade. He's excited to just watch film on the Falcons, understand the playbook, and get up to speed so we can go out there and play and not have to think too much on Sunday.
Matt I don't know how to word this. The game in Pittsburgh, you get those sometimes, right, where you can just tell. It's like in basketball when you get those games where the other team, they're just hitting everything and nothing goes your way, right? And it felt that way in Pittsburgh. The turnovers, all of it. And we don't know yet whether or not this is going to be a game that we look back and go, yeah, that was the anomaly, or if that all of a sudden exposed something about the Colts. But do you think it changed in any way, maybe even for the good, the focus on the inside the lines game of this Atlanta matchup and not allowing this to become a trap game that it could have, knowing that you have the bye and then Kansas City coming off of this trip? Did this rechannel things a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I obviously in the moment you're not wanting to, take a loss, but I guess if you have to pick a loss, you say, okay, let's have one that doesn't kill us because we're having such a good start to the season in the AFC. It was our first AFC loss. Not that you make any excuses at all, but TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, those are two elite players at their position. The Falcons just don't have guys like that. Most teams don't have a pair of guys like that. And so, you had more turnovers in one afternoon with 6 than you did the first 8 weeks combined. You only had 4 weeks 1 through 8. So, yeah, I'm more of the, it's a blip on the radar. It's a little bit of an anomaly. But that being said, you are who you are when it comes to putting things on tape. So, when you have a little bit of a leakage up front, you got to, do a better job of protecting the football in the pocket if you're Daniel Jones. But, you know what's going on when you get back from the bye, because you got to go on the road to Kansas City. And then after that, you've got 4 division games left, only 7 games remaining after that. The final push is on once you get back after the bye. And so you know the deal. When you get it's a heck of a lot easier to you go 2 weeks off to deal with a win rather than a loss, because you got time to stew about it, think about it. And so those are the important things the Colts have to consider going into this game, albeit a weird week and a lot of travel to Germany and Berlin.
Did you get the feeling, Matt, that Pittsburgh did anything in terms of their scheme to be the first ones to really wreak havoc on Daniel Jones, or was that just a matter of, look, they've got good players that finally had a game where they became good players?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the Steelers did more to the Colts than the Colts kind of took anything for granted or took anything took advantage of a mindset going into the game. I mean, Mike Tomlin has just a great track record of being able to get guys to play at a high level when they need to and when their backs are against the wall. So it's one of the things that I was kind of disappointed by was, the Colts knew that was a very desperate team in Pittsburgh. They were going to have the home field advantage. That defensive line came to play, and they definitely woke up. I mean, the weird thing about turnovers is that they just kind of come in bunches, and they just kind of snowball, if you will, at times. So once they got the first couple, the Colts were down the scoreboard, and they had to throw their way to get back into the game. Had to, take to the air a lot of pocket passes from Daniel Jones. And that's when guys get their hands up or they kind of pin their ears back, going after the quarterback. And so I think the turnovers just snowballed because of where the Colts were at and what the scoreboard dictated the Colts in terms of trying to get back into the game. So, again, I think it's kind of an outlier, a little bit of an aberration. And the frustrating thing was, the Colts got off to a good start. They do what they normally do, right? They got a 3-and-out, then a touchdown, and they were kind of like, into high gear early, but then just things just snowballed, and again, the T.J. Watt play just kind of set everything off kilter for the Colts.
Okay, lastly, Matt, you mentioned going through the air. You will be doing that to get to, obviously, Berlin for this game. For those that are curious, and I think a lot of fans are, give me just the overall scene of the travel of getting there, when the team leaves, how it looks, and then what the schedule is once you're over there, because it is an acclimation.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we're going to leave later on tonight, and we're supposed to land middle of the day German time tomorrow, so that's Friday. So it's almost like a time machine, right? 'Cause as soon as you land, it's time to go. It's time to be up and operate your day. And so we'll get to the hotel, or, kind of like the training hub base, if you will, for the Colts. And then a few hours later, we'll get back on a shuttle and a bus and go to the stadium. The Colts will have a walkthrough, or I would say a practice/walkthrough, kind of a mixture of both tomorrow, and then do some media availability. Tomorrow it's going to be late in the day German time, but kind of middle of the day back here Eastern time. And then Saturday is another mock game walkthrough for the team at the stadium. And then there's a lot of marketing opportunities outside of team responsibility, if you will, right? There's kind of like a gathering spot in downtown Berlin for Colts fans. It's kind of like the hub for all of the fans. It's called the DAS Center, and there's going to be some Q&As and some other public forums that are obviously centered around the NFL and the Colts in that area. And then obviously the game is on Sunday, and so you kind of wake up and go and get to the stadium pretty early. And we've got just some logistical things to hash out with, there's some electricity conversion stuff and internet and just things that come with playing in a different stadium and a different continent and different rules and regulations. So that's the boring stuff. But for the most part, it's going to be go, 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 work, 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 taking a little bit of sight and scenes. But for the most part, you're there to work and be part of a football game, and hopefully the Colts get a win before the bye.
Now, I'm just going to guess that you don't have to make a connection in LaGuardia, right?
It's a straight shot. It is. I think 8.5 hours there and almost 10 hours coming home.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? All right. Well, Matt, certainly safe travels to all of you and enjoy it. Guten Tag. How do you say goodbye in German?
Guten Tag. Good day is both. A good day is hello and goodbye. So Guten Tag works too. Absolutely.
Okay. And then how do you say Guten Tag works okay for goodbye also?
Yeah, like good day. I'll see you later. That kind of thing. Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here. I should know better about some of these basic things. Willkommen is welcome. Please and thank you. Bitte schön is like thanks a lot. I got to work on goodbye. Maybe next week when I talk to you, I'll have a better goodbye in German.
Well, you know what? Next week I'm going to be in Germany. So you'll be, believe it or not, because during the bye week we're going to Austria and Germany. So this is why I need to know these things, right?
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. So there you go. Shannon would like to know how you say you can fly home by yourself. Then she'd like to know how to say that. so she knows that, right?
Yeah, you only need one finger for that. You're good.
That's right. All right, Matt. Travel safe, language. Man. Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
All right, Guten Tag. Matt Taylor, the voice of the Colts. We'll come back. J&V will do the crossover, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. Love-HVAC.com is the website. 317-353-2141, the telephone number. We'll check in with John up at the Bulldog. Plenty of time for you to get up there and enjoy a cold beverage. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient, as he's going to be there until 6. We'll check in with him next. So yesterday we did the question, Eddie, and I believe the polls have closed. We did not allow mail-in voting. On who is the bigger band, AC/DC or Metallica? Now, one of the bands got 56% of the votes. The other 44%. Would you like to guess which of those two was deemed by the listeners of this esteemed show as the bigger band?
I'm going to assume that our listeners and your Twitter following, ex-post Twitter as you call it. By the way, why do you call it ex-post Twitter again?
Well, it's Twitter, but then now it's X. But when it was Twitter, people would say tweet me, and now with X, it's you post, right?
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to assume that your ex-post Twitter followers and our listeners went with AC/DC as the 56%.
That is correct. AC/DC indeed. Tonight, by the way, going to be a special evening, and I am happy to be a part of the Live Like Lou Foundation. You can find out more about that organization at livelikelou.org. This is family support for those with ALS. And tonight we are going to be doing a trivia challenge. This is all going to be at the Ritz up in Carmel. And not just a night to raise funds for helping out for a great cause, but I think also to let those that either are in the journey of ALS or the family of those that have ALS, to let them know that their journey is not alone. And there are those that are constantly doing what we can to find a cure and a path for obviously ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. But it will be a special evening tonight doing that, and I thank the Live Like Lou Foundation for having me out. livelikelou.org is the website for them. JMV is at one of my favorite places, one of my haunts, if you will, the Bulldog up just south of Broad Ripple on College, and joins us now. John, big show lined up for you.
Love the Bulldog right here, Jake. This is classic material at 54th in College. Hey, by the way, are you the quiz master tonight, and do people need to answer in the form of a question in your trivia?
They do not have to answer in the form of a question, but there are multiple rounds of the trivia, and I have come up with 10 questions for one of the rounds, and a team can actually auction off to have me help them, because one of the rounds is going to be, I think, like Indy 500 level stuff, and if they want me to help, then I will help out a team.
So are we talking, is there going to be like literature and science and all that crap that I don't know a damn thing about?
I think it's predominantly Indianapolis trivia.
Oh, cool. Okay, so nothing about
now,
what is igneous rock or anything like that with the answers.
Correct. When it comes to our favorite rock groups, we go with igneous over AC/DC. No. So let me ask you this, John. I asked this question earlier on the program. I'll give you one of them that I asked earlier. Are you ready?
Right.
There were 4 members. In 1984, Bob Knight was the Olympic basketball coach. Many believe it to be the finest amateur team assembled of all time. 4 members of that 1984 Olympic team in their basketball career would also play for the Indiana Pacers. Can you name them?
Tisdale.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Mullen.
Yes.
And
the other one was drafted by the Pacers that year.
They didn't. Jeff Turner played in Orlando.
Has an NBA record for most minutes played without a technical foul, and missed a layup that kills me to this day because I think it would have beaten New York in '94.
Why can't I? Why I can't? I'm trying to see the picture right now.
Point guard out of Georgia. Quiet as could be. Point guard out of Georgia.
Vern Fleming. How did I not? Yeah, how did I forget about it? I just forgot Vern Fleming was on that team, not as a member of the Pacers.
Correct.
That's well done right there. You know, I remember Vern Fleming. We were all in love back then, Jake, of the big kind of combo guard, the bigger point guards, because Magic Johnson kind of set that trail ablaze, and Vern Fleming was one of those types of dudes. I think that's why everybody fell in love with George McLeod until everybody found out he couldn't play, and that was problematic.
Well, and McLeod, you know, and Donnie Walsh will tell you that Dick Versace in particular was convinced that McLeod could be a bigger point guard, and then they found out after the fact once he left here, he had some family things that happened to him when he was here, but he went to Dallas and became a really good shooter. And it's like, wait a minute, maybe they should have just had him as a shooting guard, right? Yeah.
I always thought that he just was that described as such because that was kind of the cool thing to be.
Correct. That's
was
right.
A big point guard back then.
I think that's right.
They were forcing that square peg in a round hole and trying to turn him to something he really wasn't.
No, I think that's correct, yeah. And as a matter of fact, he was their last top 10 pick until Benedict Mathurin, if you can believe that. What's lined up on the big show today, John?
Mike Chappell a little bit later on, Sauce Gardner, as you guys have been playing the sound from a little bit earlier today, going to play in Berlin coming up on Sunday. The magnitude of that performance, the rest of week number 10. You were in Bloomington last night. Hey, Jake, Darren DeVries, if for nothing else, man, offensively shooting the threes and hitting free throws, I'll take it.
No question.
After watching these back-to-back eras and coaches with that program, I will take it. You saw a group last night that was active, and they're going to be fun as hell to watch this season, I think.
And they guard, too. There's no question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, we'll see how overall talented they are, but they were fun to watch. Eddie said it best, look kind of like the Pacers in their ball movement and spacing.
Agreed.
All right, John.
We can all love that.
Bulldog 54th in college to see John. He will be there. We'll throw it out to you in just a couple minutes, all right?
You got it, pal. Thank you.
All right, J&V joining us on The Crossover, brought to you by the good guys at Love Heating and Air. All right, back tomorrow at noon. We will be with you previewing Colts, obviously, over in Germany, and much more tomorrow. I appreciate you listening today to Query & Company.